6.1, which I just haven't put out yet because.
Okay. Good morning and Friday, March 14th here in House Transportation. And we are still working on the version 5.3 of the T-bill. And we have Damian Leonard from our legislative council with us this morning. And we're kind of picking up with where we left things off yesterday. We still have section 4, section 13, 14, I think are still open. And I'd like to update where we are in the committee when we can bring it up. Section 4 is related to the agency's request in language regarding around changes in the dates for the T-board on appeals on cancellation of projects and money that would or wouldn't be paid back from the town. And there was an original proposal, the regional planning commissions and whatnot, and the responses came back with a proposed language that we then put in and looked at, and the agency has responded to that. So then I took that language and sent it back to the RPCs and said, how do you feel about this updated language? And they came back with their response, which is getting shared through to email, getting posted on our page. Basically, they are still asking for a committee to be committee/study to be put together. Our testimony that we've seen and heard is revolved around all of the grant work and the grant proposals, and the paperwork outlines how the process works. So when I look at the back and forth, I think that we also heard in a way that perhaps the solution here is bigger than the amount of issues and problems that we heard from the agency's chief engineer. So if you want to look at it, I think that eventually the language will be, or is headed there to our website in terms of their response. We've had some back and forth.
I'm pulling up the language now so you can look at it. So they've proposed, instead of deleting the timeline entirely, moving it out to 60 days for the scheduling a hearing on the petition and issuing an appropriate order. And then they've added a subsection C, which if we put this in the bill, I'll make it a separate section because we don't put summer studies in the statute. But other than that, they would put back together this appears to be, and I haven't gone by word, but it appears to be the study that we had in the first alternative there, with criteria determining when payback is warranted, criteria for determining the amount of payback. Actually, this is new language here. Criteria for determining municipal payback exemptions, including definitions of within or not within a municipality's control, and a transparent process for decision-making, appropriate timelines, and then more timelines for decision-making, project sponsor appeals, and decisions. So yeah, timelines for decisions on project cancellations, and then timelines for decision-making, sponsor appeals, and decisions. So it's asking for some different things than that was in the earlier study, but otherwise uses the same sort of parties in the study and the same rough timeline, I think. Although, yeah, January 15th, 26. So
I'm also operating under 2 other additional pressures or whatnot that, to be fair, or at least to be in full disclosure, the speakers come out pretty hard that education for this entire period and into the summer, potentially that any resources from the entire piece should be limited. We should be trying to limit the amount of any additional summer work, committees, or studies at all pieces, the way I interpreted some of that feedback, as a way that we can help make sure that all resources are available for focus, and that the bill would be preferred the sooner we can get it out onto the schedule and crossover. This would take some direction and effort back and forth. I'm not sure how far we want to go. I don't know if there's other spots within the committee that have comments. I don't want to try to resolve their issues. I know that the piece in this short time frame, I don't want to try to resolve their issues. I'm not saying we don't want to. I know that the agency is committed that they feel a lot of this is addressed in the process of the spot. I'm not in a spot to conflict that. So anyway, I have 3 or 4 things that are throwing around in that circle between, I'm not in favor of the summer committees or more reports based on what I've been kind of told. And I'm not, I'm also cognizant that we were hoping to have a potential vote today. So that's where I'm at. I don't know where anybody else is at in the committee on this particular piece. Representative Warren?
I mean, I think like the timing changes from 30 to 60 days. That's an easy fix, but I'm also feeling like this was mentioned on the floor this morning, but studies, like, do we need another study? So I think that if they're pushing for that, I wouldn't be supportive of that.
Yeah, no, I concur. Obviously, we can't sync up. They're on different wavelengths, I think, at this point in juncture, in the process. I would just make a motion to remove section 4 from people.
Second.
Representative Couch, any discussion?
Yeah, no, I think I would feel the same way. I mean, I see the concerns of the planning folks and Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And it seemed like this was a proposal by the agency, you know, to try to clean things up, which seems good, but it may be causing, you know, some angst. And if they want to come back next year with a proposal, then it should be, they can come and say, hey, we've already worked with Vermont League of Cities and Towns where, you know, that they're on board. And I think if we do it this way, we might be rushing it and could cause problems for some of our municipalities. Or at least, yeah.
Does anybody else have any other comments?
Would we still be retaining the change in the dates? Or nothing? We just would be, the question is taking it off entirely.
Take the section out entirely is the proposal that we're looking at.
Okay.
There's still time for the parties to work out a compromise in the Senate.
Yeah.
You know, that way you can get the bill out and they can continue working.
Okay.
Take a straw poll.
Well, yeah,
Quick straw poll, and all those in favor of removing section 4 at this time? It's unanimous, 10-0-1. You don't have to necessarily record that or not. I'm sure how that works. First time cheers, learn that all. Right. All right, so that, fortunately or fortunately, either way, we're taking that part off the, section 4 is coming out.
It's just
So I guess our instructions to you, our alleged counsel is in the next
Yeah.
version, section 4 is out. That's going to renumber everything else.
Yep, I am doing that as we speak. So not sure if you'll get to a vote today, but in the interests of that, I'm making changes as we speak. Realistically, just for the committee's benefit, given that we're at 11:25, I would need lunchtime to get a clean draft. So you'd have to come back for a final vote after lunch if we
Vote on
get it
what?
to that point for on the T-bill.
Oh, no.
We're not gonna-
Yeah.
On the agenda,
You
all
mentioned-
week, we have had potential vote on the agenda all week. So it has been on here for this day as a target to take a potential
We
vote.
looked at it like, yeah.
So it is the word potential, but we are going to find a way to get through these sections at least.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure, Damien, I mentioned that piece in section 10. Take a look at that. That was a real clerical piece. We don't need to look at it here, but
I've already corrected
Okay.
the piece in section 10 with the missing word
I
county.
want you to know there's people out there watching. They make useful suggestions. And so I guess we go to section 13 is also outstanding.
All right, section 13. Getting there. So now section 13, right?
Yep.
That's the not the intent section for the mileage-based user fees.
Is that now
So
section?
that's got updates from yesterday. And I can show you them on the screen here. They're as I said, this is a work in progress as we make changes.
Let us know what page and piece. So.
My pages are going to be different.
Oh,
But yeah, so it's section 13 in your draft, section 12 in mine, since I just lost the former section 5. And so we've just added battery electric vehicle in front of pleasure car. And whoops, wrong way. And electric vehicle infrastructure in front of fee instead of registration fee. Because what was going to be an annual increased registration fee is now the infrastructure fee.
section 13.
Yep.
Our old section 13, representative, yep, section 13, here. Legislative intent, piece.
Yeah. So those are the two changes in there. And I've added a definition that we've used in prior bills that just cross-references the definitions of BEV, PEV, and PHEV, in case anyone wants to get clarity on what is what in all of those very closely related and similar sounding acronyms. So,
When we say approximately equivalent, we're not defining the number yet, that's down the road, and but we are suggesting that perhaps it might be a higher number than what had just been the state gasoline tax. And we want them to consider that is what we're saying.
yeah, and
We're
that,
not finding a number, and it's clear that we need more work in this area before a number can be actually. But is that what our intent is? That
Yep.
we think it could be higher than what was originally discussed, but we're not ready to name an actual rate.
right, and it still leaves the ultimate rate setting sort of approval. So AOT will come in with a suggested rate, and then ultimately you'll enact legislation to put that rate into statute or to provide the authority to impose that rate for AOT. And so there will still be, I guess, another bite at the apple here for the committee once they've done their due diligence to come in and explain why they came up with the number. And for you to review the fiscal projections and so forth and determine if that number is appropriate. It also means that if we have additional changes at the federal level and perhaps the federal government makes updates to deal with their declining gas tax revenues, you can address those too at that time. So it's just general intent to give some guidance to AOT as they do that work.
Representative Pouches, I have a question over to you, Patrick. We can dial a friend.
Yeah, Patrick, are you all, assuming we get funding, is this, sort of what you're expecting and something you can deliver?
It's on record, Patrick Murphy, Vermont Agency of Transportation. This language allows us to continue to develop the mileage-based unity and keep us on a schedule and ideally to deliver something to you in January for statutory language.
Yeah, I think the idea of holding it back and determining what that final rate is per mile, allows us to next year get some testimony. We certainly don't want to impact continued sales of EVs. We don't want to cause a higher payment, but we want it to be, I've always said, I think we want it to be fair. And this is, a future funding source, and we all know that that's important, so.
Is there any other committee discussion on this portion? Are we, by a show of nods or thumbs up, we want to keep this section in the bill? Or not? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, more than enough to keep it in there? Okay. Check that off, I guess. And section, what was 14? EVSEs.
Yep.
And the one-time appropriation to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And I'm gonna go back and summarize. I met with representatives from the ACC that were in here and testified yesterday. I don't have any further clarification of the amount of money that they had talked about in reserve or not reserve, if they were holding for the different counties. I don't have any more specifics than that, but as far as the overall issue, the way I understand it is we as a legislature passed a law that said we would charge electric vehicle owners a registration fee, and that electric registration fee would go to support the build out of chargers. We had a one-time appropriation of 1.7 million that had started the program the year before. Now this money was expected to come from the registration fees to them. It was not in the budget originally, so if we're going to continue to follow through with the legislation, we have to have a section in our budget to do that. Where the reason it's not, that it was on hold, I guess, is we're looking for $3 million to program mileage-based user fee so that we can then move forward with that estimate that's anywhere from $4 to $5 to $6 million in fees that are there. That has already been approved, we just aren't there. And we don't have the federal grant money coming in to pay for it. This was being considered as one of the options of, rather than sending them the money now, if we had heard that they were putting some of that money on hold, as some of the counties, no county could get more than 10% of the money, and there are counties that don't have enough applications yet, and they were holding that money in reserve, and we need the money right now to program mileage-based user fee. That was the conversation. That's, if we leave this as is, we're giving up on that as a source of potential mileage-based user fee programming. If we were to make changes, we could potentially go in that direction. Committee will need to make a decision on that today. Does that sum up I'm looking to you just to confirm, does that sum up what your understanding of the issue is?
Yeah.
So then I guess on top of that, I'd like to hear the committee's discussion on this program. And I think Representative Burke, your hand was up first.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about keeping this in and giving the money to the ACCD. First of all, we told the people who have electric vehicles that this is what their registration fee, when they complain, this is what their registration fee is going for. That's one thing. Second of all, we have a program that's been very successful, and they've built it up over 3 years. And, you know, they said that they could use all the money. If they didn't be concerned about, you know, the equitable distribution, they could spend all the money next year. They've got the capacity, they have the you know, infrastructure to do the whole thing. And I feel that, and the other thing is it's really important to keep up with helping people charge at home, because otherwise they're, you know, having to spend more money to charge in public charging. And I also concerned about taking money and saying, oh yeah, we'll pay you back next year, and then something happens and it doesn't happen. You know, well, we'll pay you back out of the proceeds of this, you know, we know we're going to get this money. So I just don't like that idea. So I feel strongly about keeping this language here and giving them the 1.4. It's a really good program and very well run.
Representative, are you all set? Representative Pouch and then Representative Keyser.
Yeah, while very vocal on the mileage-based user fee and want to move that forward, I feel like, you know, we've done incentives for electric vehicles. Those are on the way out, which at some point they need to, that's fine. I think this is that last important piece that will keep folks from jumping into an EV. And I think it's there's two pieces of affordability and equitability built into this. One is they're trying to, you know, spread it out around the state, and that's, otherwise they could burn through this money very quickly. They're trying to do that. I think that's the right thing to do, to spread out the infrastructure throughout the state so that everybody has a chance to participate. It's one thing on the equitability. And the other thing is, you know, I'm very fortunate. I have my own garage. I have 200 amp service. I got a charger and now charging or owning an EV is not an issue whatsoever for me. And we can utilize it, and everything's great. Well, not everybody has garage, not everybody even, they may be in an apartment, they may be in a condo. And also there's some public spaces that this helps. And I'll just give another example. I went to the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum over the week. And, we did a long drive and I was like, geez, I'm gonna have to charge before I go home. And sure enough, in that public space was a level 2 charger. I was on there for 3 hours while I was visiting the facility and, got me home without a problem. So I just think this is a good program. It's limited. It's not going to go forever. At some point, the infrastructure fee will go away as we move to mileage-based user fee. But I think we've got to have evidence over the last 2 years. It's a good program. It's being utilized. And I would just like not to steal from it and break it up. Let's let it go through its life cycle.
Representative Keiser is next. We'll go over here.
Thanks. So I very moved by your argument, Representative Burke, because we said we were going to do something. And if your word's not worth anything, then it's not worth anything. I would love to take this money and move it to get to a larger goal, if you will. But if we don't keep our word, I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Representative Lally and then Representative Tony.
Yes, I think that this helps a tier of housing that we are building in the state that would otherwise, this might not be provided as part of that housing. So I think that's really important. I am concerned in our present circumstances where we have many needs with the idea of kind of hanging on to the geographical distribution, which is a huge issue, but it seems a larger problem than this program can really address. In the testimony that we took, it seemed that they were not able to answer the question of how much potential demand is not being met because of barriers to infrastructure readiness at the local level. So I think, as the transportation sector starts to become more electrified, I think, we should have a say in perhaps how some of these broader decisions are made. And we are kind of de facto becoming, moving into a situation where we have some arguable jurisdiction over that area of our state. So that's a separate issue. I would be in favor of keeping this if we can get that money out as quickly as possible. And so some kind of relaxation on the geographical distribution makes some sense to me, because otherwise, we have a lot of other very meritorious folks asking us for some support that we are not able to help them with. So that would be what I would ask the committee to for their consideration.
Okay. Representative Thomas.
Thanks. I just wanted to share a point around fair revenue generation from EVs that's related to the development of home-based electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Yesterday, Rep. Casey and I talked with Michelle Boompower around the concern about how we generate revenue from out-of-state EVs, and the hope eventually, in kind of the longer-term strategy, is to be able to add a surcharge, potentially, theoretically, to public chargers. In that scenario, though, Vermonters with EVs would end up double charged if they're charging publicly with a surcharge and paying the MBUF. And so what she noted was that, that's where this piece of supporting the development of private home-based electric vehicle charging infrastructure is really important, so that Vermonters are able to charge at home or at their place of residence and not have to rely solely on public chargers where they might theoretically in the future be charged a surcharge. So this is all about sort of the theoretical future, but that point was really important to me in terms of thinking about our strategy for generating revenue from EVs in a way that's fair to Vermonters. And so I think I wanted to raise that in support of maintaining the funding for Vermonters to have this type of infrastructure at their homes so that they can be able to charge. So I support making sure that that funding stays where it can be used to develop charging infrastructure.
Representative Clark?
So, yeah, I do agree to a point, however, for someone who lives on a border, and if we're going to eventually get to that type of end buff for all, like I already pay the gasoline tax regardless of whether I'm in state or Vermont. So that the charging that I do may happen in New York, and I'm getting charged the amount in Vermont. So if we're gonna somehow get to MBUF for all, my electricity that I'm going to be assessed on, I will be double charged anyway, so. Because I'm gonna be doing it out of state. I literally live 400 yards from the border. The closest gasoline station for me and charging station would be New York. But my MBUF charge would be based on the mileage that my car generates. They're gonna read it on my car. So
My understanding is that MBUF for all is much less definitive or further out.
I thought they were gonna do it on the mileage of your car. That's what I read. That's what I read.
Yeah. What I do know is. I don't-
Reading my car when they-
Part of what I've heard from the testimony is that they need to get started so they can make sure to answer all of the questions. I'm not
Yeah.
the subject matter expert, but
Yeah.
that's my recollection of that portion of it. I wouldn't be able to answer that specifically. If we want to phone a friend, we can do that. I'm not sure if you're done with your portion on the phone or not, or if there's anybody else that wants to go next. You haven't been yet on this portion.
So
then we'll go back-
Representative White.
Go back to Representative Keiser after Representative White, unless your hand, you always get a full rank, that's your.
No, go for it. What do you got?
So on the MBUF, and, I think I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. The simplest way in my mind is to add a fee on charging stations, level 2, level 3, just like we have a fee on gasoline. And then we don't have to worry about any of that. But I was told by, I think, someone at AOT that was not possible. But we're now, but then there was a proposal that maybe we can do that on level 3 charge. So it's just like kind of opening up a can of worms, which we're not gonna solve. So I just want to put that out there. But to the original question of whether we transfer this money from the money that was intended for ACCD to MBUF research, I'm siding with no, for a lot of reasons, because we had said the original intent was to develop these level 2 charging stations. Is there another reason? We're in a bit of chaos with, the NEVI program was just canceled, and and we've heard testimony about, from other vendors with paving, that consistency is really important. So when I think about the ACCD program, which it looks like a very well-developed, well-executed program, I think, they shared kind of everything. They were very honest about, they haven't been able to spend this money. We don't want to penalize them for sharing that they've got some money in the coffers that they haven't used yet. I think they're being transparent about that. We don't want to use that against them, and recognizing that the federal funding is probably going to create more chaos. I think we don't want the less we can get into let's take it from here and put it over here. I just think that's maybe not a good direction to go down. So for all those reasons, I would support keeping the money where it is.
Representative Keith?
Thank you very much. We're talking, there's a lot of extraneous discussion around this. All we're talking about is moving 1.4 million from the T fund over to community action. Regarding Representative Lally's comment about getting the money out the door, I will say that Burlington is fully funded and Rutland has capacity. And I would argue that to get the money out the door is not the issue, it's to get the money out to the right areas. And I would suggest that discussion is not even in here, but so I wouldn't even ask the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to reconsider their geographic distribution. I think that probably what they've got is fair, and we ought to continue along that line. I mean, we started about fairness, and this program was started in that vein, and so let's keep it that way. But none of that speaks to what we're proposing right now. Thank you.
Representative Wells?
I agree with Chris, and I believe we got to keep improving level 2 infrastructure, so I can go along with it.
So just to that point then, do you want to keep it kind of nebulous and not say that it's going to follow the same guidelines as what we heard yesterday, geographic a limit
Right.
in.
Yeah, my comment was, all we're talking about is transferring the money. However, the program is administered, let's leave it at, we're not even proposing to make any changes there. So let's let it lie.
Not saying that we can't, that's the
No.
direction I was gonna go before you brought it up is, this is a policy committee. Should we say that none of this money is gonna go towards level 1s? I think there was a couple of examples that they did. So we said, all right, we're gonna do parameters, no level 1s, it's gotta be 2 or higher. And should we open it up to a park or amusement and recreation? Which I think they said would get it out the door quicker and then change the geographic. I know, what's that? Yeah. Monument, yeah. I got a nice spot up there, but
Is that amusement?
So
Is that amusement or is that recreation?
So, I mean, those are, obviously, more than our purview to do that. To change that, and I wouldn't be opposed to, to doing that, because it seems like obviously everybody's agreed that it stays there. The question is, all right, let's change the policy piece of it. And I think that's worthwhile to do, because, if we can't afford certain communities to, utilize it, they don't want it, so.
Representative Wentz?
Just along the lines of what Representative Corcoran was saying, if we can make suggestions to change the policy, I think it's a good idea to ask them to continue this, try to get into these geographic areas that don't have the charging. And I think they said in testimony yesterday that this was because some of the grant applications were weak. And so could we suggest that ACCD works with the regional development corporations, which are in every county, and they're more boots on the ground. And I would imagine that those regional development corporations could provide some technical assistance to allow to help bolster the grant applications from some of these geographic areas that don't have the charging stations and need them.
Representative Powers?
I believe this whole program was provided funds and they developed the policy and they came up with, hey, we want it to be equal across the state. And, here are some of the rules. And although level 1 could be allowed, I thought there was such a small amount.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
level
level
1.
one.
So it sounds like to me like the policy they have is working. And I also heard them say with additional money, they would now start saying, well, maybe we'll open up this category a little more just to make sure we get the money out. So I'm not sure in the next week or today, we could come up with, they have flexibility in their policy. And from what I now a couple of years of testimony from them, who are working it, it seems like it's working and it seems like their policy was a good one to begin with. And I think, knowing there's some pressure that they're gonna look at that policy very closely and make sure it's equitable and make sure they accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm not sure I wanna disturb, them or dictate to them without taking a lot more testimony and then a full understanding and talking to them some more and whatnot.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems a little bit like micromanaging, but I was wondering whether it would be appropriate to hear from the representative of the agencies.
We could, but I wanna say that we did do policy last year. It wasn't all that. We created policy last year around that, but yeah.
We can, if we have a
You know,
specific question for
in
them.
response to
we
some
do
of
it
the
with other-
questions that we have on the. yeah.
We do it when there's a phone a friend in the room with other agencies, so if there are specific questions and they're willing to answer, we could certainly do that. I also would comment too, I know that there was policy done in the committee because I argued that we should be focused on multi dwellings as opposed to, and I didn't want the money to go to, I mean, I voted against doing the whole thing entirely, so let's be clear. But if we're going to do it, I'm like, it needs to be focused on residential activity for Vermonters and not, it wasn't a tourism bill in terms of even though I fully support that. We was policy, we did go through the whole thing, and I know that I argued that it be specifically residential and all residential directed and not in recreation and tourism spots in this policy last year when we passed it, or the year before, whatever it was. Can't keep track of that part, but so I do know that we went through policy and that spot. As far as if there are specific questions and they were willing, I would do that. I would notice for time for people that have agenda items they want to get to. It's up to the committee to determine what they want to go at this point. So if we have a specific question or not, or do we want to go to a vote on the section, I'm certainly throw it to you either way you want to go. But to your question of whether you
Well,
want to ask.
I don't
questions or
have a
not.
specific
Or if
question. I
you
just
think
didn't
that-
know if somebody.
If you'd like the opportunity to comment, we would then, based on Representative Burke's comment, you guys are certainly welcome to comment if you'd like, but you don't have to. It's up to you. But
If there was a policy decision to be made, would you recommend one? Not to put you on the spot, but.
so, but you don't have to be put on the spot if you don't want to.
all the time. I would, so again, I don't think, I think I said this in testimony, sorry for the record, Bronwyn Cook, Community Planning and Policy Manager with DHCD. I don't think it would be harmful to add public attraction back in, understanding the tourism part fully, but also that not all of our downtown areas are like tourist hubs. There's other downtowns. Nantucket does have a lot of tourism, but there's also a lot of people that do live there that don't have solid access to DC fast charge. And then the other part that I do feel strongly about is level one. It's not a huge dollar investment. And again, not to make this too personal, but as a renter, I know that my landlord is not going to do a level 2 charger. It wouldn't work at our property, but he may be convinced to do a level 1. It's a low enough investment. It doesn't require a panel upgrade. And sometimes it's like, it's just that thing that gets a property owner in the door, and it would work for me. Like it wouldn't be the fastest, but I'm sleeping for, hopefully 9 hours a night, because that's how I operate best. My car can get what it needs to get me the next day on a level 1 charge. So I don't think it hurts to leave it in. Again, we're not seeing a huge amount of uptake, but I do think, and for other properties where they've got 100 parking spaces, doing some level 1 then also gives the tenants that ability to say, do I really need a faster charge on a level 2, or can I do it at a level 1? And you can set the pricing to tell residents, choose the speed that you need. So it's just, I think providing the options that work at different properties are what we need to do right now to help just get the infrastructure out there.
And the only comment I would add is, we work closely with the RDCs and RDCs already kind of trying to get these projects in the pipeline, so we are actively working with them.
Can I ask, would opening it up to public attractions, let's say in the Northeast, and I'm talking about the geographic distribution challenges that seem to be so difficult to overcome. Are those, I'm wondering if those locations might inherently be a little more charger ready than maybe somebody's home that is kind of off the beaten track perhaps more, and that might be a way to increase access for folks in the region, maybe not specific homeowners per se, but just to kind of, if our goal is to build a sort of, make this a more normative ecosystem of, you know, charging is like a normal thing that you have in your community, would that, do you think that would help?
To be honest, I think the NEK they need both. There are multi-unit properties up there, not as many as Chittenden County, but there are. And they need more DC fast charging, not only for the residents, but for their tourism economy as well. So I think DC fast charging is gonna serve both up in that community really well, but they do still, they're, you know, you need both. That's the whole point of the network, is you have to have DC fast charging because people need to know that they can get a charge on the go if they're going longer distances, but they need home charging as well, because that's where it's gonna be the most cost effective and sort of reliable spot. So I think the NEK needs both. That's.
So it sounds like in maybe just adding that more flexibility would give you guys the ability to get the money out the door faster.
Correct. The more flexibility to do more workplace charging in the NEK would help, because we have had workplace charging applications up there that we've had to turn down.
Okay.
We also have had a lot of public attraction applications up in the NEK that we have had to turn down because we don't have funds, and right now we wouldn't have a way to open it back up to those public attractions. If we do open it back up to public attractions, as I mentioned, I think we need to have internally a conversation around how do we better define public attraction, maybe for level 2 differently than for level 3, and just make sure that we are putting it in those places where it's gonna serve residents the best and make the best use of those dollar investments to kind of serve the most people.
Okay.
And level 2 might not be the best public attraction investment.
Where are we?
So, well, where are we? We're not in a spot to change the policy on this particular
Nope.
piece. If somebody wants to continue to go in that direction, that's, you know, I happy to have that dialogue if that's where we want to focus our energy. As far as today goes and where we're at, we need to push through to the T-bill, and I guess I would say that if you want to pursue more into the policy, wherever it is, then I guess come to me and say that how we should spend part of next week, or not, or how else we finish out our time. But we, the speaker wants the bill out as soon as possible. Some people have helped us coach it to last a little longer, otherwise it could be out, so we have the spots there.
I would like to move it along, because if we did policy, it would be, you know, subsection A, but I move that we approve section 13.
And we're not, yeah, we're looking at seeing, do we have the shaking of the heads, or that, well, we didn't motion on any of the other sections. We shook our heads and, you know, our thumbs up, and we need six thumbs or 6 shaking heads, and I count at least 6.
Okay, so no changes. Okay, so you'll have a new draft.
We're not quite done. We're close, but we're not quite done.
Yeah, you'll have a new draft 6.1 on say, I guess, when we get back.
And we still have a couple more minutes. If there are particular any pieces that anybody has that they would like included in the bill, we've got to at least hear what they might be, so that the rest of us and our ledge council might be prepared, and we can continue on to whatever agenda come Tuesday. But as far as the bill as it's presented right now, do we not check off every single section?
I think you checked them all off.
As it is right now, it would be prepared to go to a vote unless others have anything to say at this point.
I don't think Patty was in, but we took out section.
Oh, when you were in the room, yeah, we did,
There were no changes.
we took out
We
section.
took it out.
We took out section.
Yes.
There's no, he said there's no change.
Oh, yeah.
No problem.
Replace all the public transit with a $2 million increase.
Which- Representative Burke, please. Representative Burke.
There's some language that keeps around taking from electrify your fleet because they haven't had any real interest in that program for a long time and putting it into Drive Electric Vermont. And Damien has that language.
Yeah.
We could just look at it for a minute.
Pulling it up now. So this is the language that AOT drafted, and then I would if this is something the committee wants to move forward, I would add it in to the bill and put it in our format, so forth. But it would take $325,000 in monies that were appropriated to electrify your fleet in the last fiscal year, and apply that to the public-private partnership with Drive Electric Vermont to support the expansion of the PEV market through coordination with stakeholders, education and outreach, infrastructure development, technical assistance and support to municipalities and business desiring to electrify their fleets. So
Are there any particular comments right now on this piece? We will, if you're looking to see that be included in the bill.
I just have a question on the fiscal year FY 24. Is there money left over or something?
There's, yes, in the electrify your fleet, there's money left.
Yeah, that didn't get.
Okay, so it's from FY 24. Okay.
Do you want to speak on this at all or not?
If asked.
I guess I would say, does the agency have a comment on this, or does the agency have any comment on this piece? At this point, it's not in the bill yet, it's a drafted piece.
So
Came from,
the Electrify Your Fleet program was carved out of Replace Your Ride program funds a couple of years ago when that money wasn't moving quickly. As you recall from testimony, Replace Your Ride had a significant uptick later once those program guidelines were changed. With the Electrify Your Fleet program, there has been some money that's moved to municipalities and nonprofit organizations, some shared mobility organizations that you heard from yesterday. But it hasn't been moving quickly, and so there are funds there. Drive Electric Vermont is a partnership that we've had for a number of different years, and supported all kinds of different activities related to electrification that will become increasingly important with the absence of federal support in this area and with declining support at the state level. So they support things like the program that the Agency of Commerce Community Development works with. So they're able to provide some technical assistance for those that are applying for grants, for example, through this program to be able to bring that industry knowledge to municipalities and other potential applicants. So we feel that at this point, it's a good use of funds to be able to get some of the work done that needs to be through this public-private partnership.
given the time piece, I guess, I do have some questions in terms of any existing applications in it, and I want to see a little bit of information about what has or hasn't happened in Electrify Your Fleet, what grants we've issued, where we're at. So I would like to at least hear, and then I want to hear what Drive Electric was planning to do with the money.
Yeah.
So I don't need all of that answered today. What I would need from the committee is this an avenue that we want to pursue or not, and their interest level to have Ledge Council draft the more appropriate actual language or the language that would get submitted. And given that I would want to get at least those questions answered come next week, is there an interest in pursuing this amongst members? And is there any questions or discussion?
I thought it was just interest.
Is there, well, if there's any comments first, I'll take those. If not, then interest, I would gauge that. If there's comments, seeing none. Is there an interest in exploring this?
Yes.
That at least 6. Okay, so I guess that's it. Damien, that's parts of yours, and Patrick on the phone a friend area, if we can at least schedule a few minutes with Cameron on Tuesday to hear what has happened in Electrify Your Fleet and what Drive Electric would do with funds. Representative White, and then I'm
Just
sorry.
one quick question on H 426, which was that kind of
Yeah.
large bill
Yeah.
that a number of representatives shared, and we started going through. I don't think we finished going through that.
Now, we didn't get to the last couple.
So
Pieces.
is there an opportunity, if we were supportive of one or two of the proposals in H 426, that we could review that early next week and weave that into the T-bill?
My answer to that would be depending on what they are, and how much time we have left, and how we'd have to hear from, who we'd have to hear from about it, much like this particular piece. I would recommend that you figure out what that be and come ask and make sure we lined up that the agency is ready to go, that election council is ready to go, that whatever witnesses they might be, that whoever that you would need, we would need to hear from. So there is, that's not a no, but but the options are dwindling.
It's ticking.
So.
And I will have to say that we did go through the whole bill.
So we need
With the people who we did go through the whole bill with
Yes.
the
Oh,
sponsors of the
sponsors
bill.
went through the bill, I'm
We
sorry.
didn't get to the end with Danny.
Representative Pouch had your hand up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and speaking of that bill, in there is the delivery fee. And while there's no way we're gonna, push that forward and that we're not ready to, and I wouldn't be ready to, I would like to get language in the T-bill that gets it, I call it, get it teed up with the details so that next session, we can take good testimony on why it's a good idea, why it's not a good idea, how it impacts businesses, what would be the limits, what size businesses would have to do it, does it impact local, delivery? So I would like to get that in there. That was, if we looked at options, besides getting our education money back, the mileage-based user fee and the delivery fee were two that are being done in other states, are not very costly to implement, that we have the infrastructure in place, the mileage-based user fee with the new DMV computer systems. That becomes so much easier than a few years ago. With the delivery fee, we already collect sales tax, so that would not be that difficult to implement. So I would like to have something in the bill that sort of says, make sure the agency is ready to really propose how it would work. We've got an idea on how it would work. Let them propose, here's our proposal if you want to move forward, or here are the couple of options to choose.
No, we don't have any language or any piece for that portion there. The drive electric, we're gonna move forward on. These other subjects will be whether we can get them onto the agenda and talk about them. So there's no language or any pieces yet. So we're not voting on it. There may be pursuing it. I have purposely left time in the schedule with a few days left to go in these directions. So, but whether we can complete them or not is a whole nother story.
So the follow-up, I would ask the agency and Damien to, is it possible to sit down and say, here's the language that would tell the agency, here's what we're looking for to move it that one step further. We have concepts now, yes.
The agent,
Be here forever. But yeah,
That's work that you'll have to do.
yeah, so I
outside the
guess, I
committee, and
mean, the
we're
time,
past
yeah.
where we're supposed to be, but
Is that all of your, so we have one, we have the delivery fee, is there anything else?
Well, there are a few things that, I don't know.
Just
whether-
like bullet points, what do you,
Something about lowering speed limits to 20 miles an hour in designated town village centers. There was something about using a credit card for charging. There was something about
Vehicle miles traveled.
vehicle miles traveled and some land use stuff from Kate. So I think what we can do is maybe the sponsors of book, we can get together and just huddle and just say what would be the priority and what would we need to get testimony on, given the time constraints.
yeah, I thought we were doing that. Okay.
That's my concern in actually hearing from witnesses. That's a lot. You know,
Yeah,
those
well,
are
it depends on.
several issues and if we have Tuesday, because I mean, I think Tuesday's a drop dead day. I mean, I would love to get this out of here on Tuesday night because then it has to go to appropriations. So, you know, they're already swamped and their deadline is next Friday. So.
Okay,
All right, so we got a picture of what the approach, yeah.
okay. Jen,
Well, we'll be in touch with you, about what, we might need for testimony and we could, maybe talk and you work a little bit on Mondays, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we are adjourned for,